It is with great joy that I welcome you to this service of worship. And as you enter this sanctuary, I pray that Christ might embrace you with his peace. If you are worshiping with us for the first time, I invite you to fill out a blue and white welcome card and place it in the offering plate. And I'd like to ask each of you to pass the red Ritual of Friendship pad to your neighbor that we might get to know each other by name. It is with joy that we welcome the Indianapolis Men's Chorus to help lead us in worship through their ministry of music this morning. And I would also personally like to thank them, the chorus, for their donation of food to our food pantry. You'll see all kinds of blue bags out there this morning that the chorus brought in. And it gives me an opportunity to invite each of you to remember to take one of those blue collection bags and fill it up with food and bring it back to church. Food security is an ever-present need in our community and in the world, and especially for children. The Hunger Ministry team invites you to participate in the Bread for the World offering of letters that will be dedicated this morning in our worship. As we are embraced by peace this morning, let us gather at 3 p.m. this afternoon as the Sanctuary Choir and Festival Orchestra present Grant Us Peace, a prayer for peace in our community, nation, and world. Please take the time to review all of the other opportunities for worship, education, and fellowship and mission that are listed in your bulletin this morning. And now, I invite Elder Paul Stewart to offer a minute for mission.
Good morning. Okay, it's audience participation time. Please raise your hand if you know about the parable of the Good Samaritan that is in the 10th book of Luke, or 10th chapter of Luke. Awesome, great. In the interest of time, I'll not repeat the story since it looks like most everyone here knows it. The story of the Good Samaritan never ceases to amaze me, that the Samaritan, by virtue of his being a Samaritan, he was not expected to even acknowledge the existence of any Jewish person. Yet, the Samaritan helped that injured man. He took him to the inn. He paid the innkeeper an amount equal to about 2 days' wages to take care of that man, even though the Samaritan did not even know the man whose assistance he was paying for. Just like the Samaritan who gave financial assistance to someone he did not know, Centerpoint Counseling, the wonderful counseling center here at Second Pres that helps many people through those difficult times that we all encounter, has a Samaritan Fund that my wife Susan and I began financially supporting over 30 years ago now. The Samaritan Fund makes counseling possible for people who cannot afford counseling, and about a quarter of the people seeking counseling at Centerpoint cannot afford it. Centerpoint served over 900 households last year. Many years ago, Susan and I were fortunate to benefit from wise counseling from the late Reverend George Boyle. George was the founder of Centerpoint. Yes, George helped us greatly, and looking back on it, I only agreed to go see George that first time some 38 years ago because I thought Susan needed an attitude adjustment. You see, I was working 70-hour weeks, and at the time I was wanting to build a future for us, and I felt that Susan simply wasn't being supportive. In retrospect, I regret that I was not making time in my own life for the woman who I loved so dearly, and I was letting work crowd out our young marriage. At our first counseling session, Susan said to George, "I don't know how to deal with the situation when my husband's work is his mistress." George quickly determined that I was the person who needed the attitude adjustment. Susan and I were married right here in the Second Pres Sanctuary 40 years ago, this December 20th. I always say she was 12 and I was 13 at the time. God willing, and if Susan keeps me until then, we will celebrate our 40th wedding anniversary this December 20th. We credit George with saving our marriage by recommending one fix that now, in retrospect, seems so simple. Back then, George called it a guaranteed evening. He insisted that I go out and buy a calendar, and yes, for those of you who will be surprised by this, I did not have a date book or a calendar back then. And then he had me get a red pen with red ink, and to this day I still have a red pen with a red ink, and I had to commit in advance to Susan just one evening each week when I would actually show up on time and spend that evening with Susan without doing anything related to work. Susan and I were fortunate that we didn't need financial support for our counseling, but many people do. Perhaps one or more of you sitting here this morning. That's why I'm here. Two things. First, if you have ample financial resources, please consider donating any amount. Yes, could be 2 days' wages or any amount to the Centerpoint Samaritan Fund. And there are envelopes just like this right in front of you in the pew that you can make those contributions. Second, if you feel that you or someone who you care about needs counseling but can't afford counseling, to please still contact Centerpoint, because the Samaritan Fund is there to help pay for counseling even if you can't afford it. Dr. David Chaddock is our wonderful executive director of Centerpoint, and he's here at the church today. So if you have any questions, track him down, or you can go to the Centerpoint website at centerpointcounseling.org for more information. And there's also, in page 7 of your worship booklet, some information about the 2015 Samaritan Fund objective. Thanks for your kind attention, and thanks for thinking of Centerpoint.